Hey, what's up? It's Baz the Magician, and welcome to part 2 of why people have a problem understanding why they can't understand how to learn to count cards in blackjack from watching videos, reading books, taking courses, things like that. In part 1, if you haven't watched it, go back and watch that now, but I'll briefly break down what I was explaining. I went over and went into detail the problems and all of the issues in the basics which confuse people and show people why they don't get the concepts. It's because of what the hell is going on. In this video, I'll be breaking down the specific individual parameters of certain things that lead up to those basics to give you a broader understanding about exactly what's happening. So if you haven't watched it, pause this video now, go watch it. And for those that have, I'll just continue. Now, at the end of this video, I'll be giving an analogy on what to do, because people are going to argue with me, and I want to use that analogy on why I don't really care if people want to use certain arguments or certain standpoints to try to argue their point to tell me what I'm about to explain is wrong. Okay, so stay tuned for that. But first, let me explain that the importance of having a definition and a breakdown is one thing, but having a proper breakdown to what you're actually talking about is a totally different story. So let me explain. There is no definition of what running count is. There's no definition of what true count is. There's no understanding of why a +1, a -1, or a 0 are being assigned to any of these cards, and there's no information on how that actually helps you. So with this specific visual, I will be explaining assigning a value, because I'm going to have people argue with me, which is why I'm going to use the analogy at the end. I'm going to be talking strictly about the term assigning a value. So, in blackjack, there are 16 face cards. 10s would be included in that, so I'm considering a 10 a face card. All 16 of these have a single value of 10, unless it's a very specific circumstance where you have 2 of them in one hand as one hand, that would be 20. Other than that, face cards, including the 10s, are assigned 10. This is not 16 separate instances of 10, it's just 10. No matter how many 10s or how many face cards are on the table, it's still 10. You wouldn't say 4 different people have 40. You say they have 10 because each individual 10 is independent of itself. Now, in the counting system, we're going to be applying the phrase assigning a value, and I'll be using what I just explained as a baseline. So first, the 10s through kings have an assigned value of -1. The 7s through 9s, which there are 12 of them, have an assigned value of 0. And the 2s through 6s have an assigned value of +1, and there are 20 of them. The aces still have no understanding or value put to them at all, but that's far and few in between. So you have 20 cards that are as a single +1. It's not 20 separate instances of +1, it's +1. Remember, I'm not going to have people argue with me because there aren't 16 instances of 10. There is 10 applied 16 times. It's not 16 10s. And that same principle applies to the 1s, the 0s, and everything else. So let me shuffle this up and deal out 4 hands. Now, keeping in mind, I'm going to be applying the +1s exactly as the phrase has, assigning values. So when we flip this up, we have an assigned value of +1. That's still an assigned value of +1, even though they say the 2s through 6s are +1. They're not separate instances. It's just a single value of +1. I'm not going to have it. Again, I'm going to use the analogy because people are going to try to tell me that's wrong. I'll use the analogy at the end. Okay, so in this particular case, you have a +1 and a -1. You do not have +2 and -2. Now, I'm going to take this a step further to show you an even more confusing point that nobody bothers to explain and why this is important to break down. you have +1 and -1. They don't cancel each other out because the values are still present. If they canceled each other out, there would be nothing on the table. This is what canceling out means. You still have a +1 and a -1. It's not 0. It doesn't negate itself. There are still 4 cards on the table. This brings me to the point on running count. I actually got into an argument where somebody says the running count is how many cards have been taken out of the deck. Well, guess what? 4 cards at this point have been taken out of a deck. So I argued that point that the running count is 4. Let me continue with the hand. There's still only a single -1 because the face cards are set at -1. Just like this is not 30, this is 10 because the face cards are assigned a single value of 10. This is still +1, -1, and now a 0. So you only have 3 figures, and you can only ever have 3 figures. Now, in the discard pile, these go away. These are still present, so it doesn't matter. This is still +1, -1, and 0. Since all of these numbers are assigned a blanket statement of a blanket value, and then you have this coming out, this is between these cards, and here, there's still +1, -1, and 0. There's only 3 values used here, because I assigned the value, and then I applied the assigned value accordingly. If somebody's going to argue these are separate instances, then I am going to argue the point that 2 people with the 2 separate hands of 10 both have 20. That's the argument. I'm assigning a value and applying it. Nobody's going to try to tell me that the phrase assigning a value to a pile of cards works one way and not another unless it's explained that's how it works, which brings me to the point on the analogy. The analogy I'm going to use is I create a board game, and I put in it some dice, some pieces to move, a board, and some cards. And I never provide the instructions, and I go, here's the board game. What happens now is, let's say there's a person in stature who does board games and does gaming, and then there's somebody else who's such as myself who questions this. Since there's no instructions, me, the maker of the game, is the only person in existence who knows how this stuff is being used. Now, because there's dice, what people love to do, and what people in this situation love to do, who are going to try to argue this point, will try to use their position of stature, or say they do classes, or use some arbitrary argument to try to get around the actual question. What happens here is the person who does gaming, since they have no instructions with this, they have no clue what anything does. They're using an opinion. So, what the person here who isn't the gamer, and the person who is, the person goes, what do you do with these dice? This person will then immediately, because of their stature, and say, well, you roll them, of course. It's common sense. This person will say, where did you get that information from? This person just says, oh, it's common sense, it's common sense. This person goes, you can't prove they're rolled. Well, it's obviously rolled. Millions of people roll them. That's not an argument. What then tries to happen is, you can't prove they're rolled. This person says, well, you can't prove they're not rolled, trying to reverse the argument. This person's not saying they are or they aren't rolled. This person is saying to this person, you need to prove that they're rolled, and you have nothing to back up your statement. They can argue these valid, invalid points, say, well, millions of people use them. Well, they're obviously dice. You roll them and anything else. The problem here is this person has nothing from me verifying what you do with the dice. This person's talking out their ass. This person doesn't have to prove that they have to be rolled or not rolled. This person just needs to prove that this person has no proof that they have to be rolled. in that regard, unless this person has something written from me, who is the maker of the game, that these dice have to be rolled, he's talking out his ass. This person is now not going to listen to this person. This person will then try to say, well, millions of people have rolled them, doing this, that, and the other thing. Bullshit. He's talking out his ass, trying to say, well, because of he's in a position of authority and he does gaming, or millions of people do it, is not a valid counter argument. He still has no proof that these dice are rolled. That analogy gets applied here, because unless the person who designed the system that uses +1, -1, and 0 tells you that's how you can open up a written statement from them and show that's how the count is applied, you are talking out your ass, just like the person saying to roll the dice. You have no proof, and I don't care about these arguments where people are saying, well, millions of people do it. How to do it? You have no written proof. You need to provide proof that you saying that this is how this is actually how it is. And the only person that can do that is the person who created the system. The point here is that I didn't give instructions for the dice, and this person's going off on a tangent without having a proof of any of their allegations. They're just trying to, or statements, or, whatever they're saying. They have no proof of what they're saying. They're just guessing, and they're using an opinion, and that they're trying to argue using arbitrary points when the reality is they still don't know, because I never provided that. He needs a statement from me saying, yes, these dice are rolled, or no, they're not. Without that, this person is an idiot. Period. The system for counting cards, I don't care who you are, I don't care what system you're trying to pull, I don't give a crap about who you're teaching, whether you're enrolled, how many followers you have, subscribers, nothing. Get a written statement or a video statement, or you have the person that created the system verifying what you say. I don't care if there's millions, if you want to say millions of people are using it. I don't care if you teach courses. You have no verification. If you can't show a written statement backing up the comment or have a video statement from the person that made it, you are talking out your ass, and I'm not going to argue with you. It is that simple. Well, anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I hope that helps out people. And as stuff comes up, I may make other videos about this, but I just wanted to get that out of the way and explain why I'm not going to sit there and argue with people. People will try to argue with me, and I'll just say, you use an opinion. Prove it. Get a backed up statement. And so far, none of them have. There isn't a single thing that anybody can show me from the maker of this system that's how this count is used. Simple as that. So anyway, Spaz the Magician signing out. Have a good one.